good afternoon for all of those of you listening. Welcome to the Smoke Pit with Sergeant T. I'm your host, Sergeant Townsend. I've had 8 years in the Navy and 4 years in the Army. I'm here with a special guest, a dear friend of mine and battle buddy that I used to serve with. Here's Mr. Ian. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's Ian Larson, Specialist, U.S. Army retired, 7.5 years active duty, and was medically retired for mental health reasons.
All right. It was a pleasure to have you here. We were discussing. So today we were going to be discussing, piggybacking off our discussion earlier about mental health, the improvements, and sometimes the lack of, and a lot of the processes and experiences that are going on, with today's service members and getting out and trying to seek the right help. I understand you had some pretty wild initial experiences yourself, and you were and we were discussing about the timing, that it starts kind of before you get out. It's not just, okay, here's your papers, go take care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was medically retired, so I was med boarded out of the military, and it in a way afforded me a lot of help in the process with seeking help with the VA. It gave me a lot more kind of focus on myself with regards to self-care, really just kind of helping stabilize myself, in preparation for my departure from the military.
All right. From what I understand, from what we talked about a little bit earlier, it's not something you sought right away, was it? It kind of took a while to kind of get to that point where it's like, okay, I need to go get some help, or
Yeah, that actually started like after my first deployment. Noticed that I was drinking crazy hard, like bottle a night type deal, and there was like it was ongoing. I noticed that I'm having issues here, and it kind of culminated when I got arrested the one time in Fort Campbell, and I had to sit down and kind of take a good look, take stock of myself, and okay, yeah, I really need the help. So, I was put in contact with the Army Substance Abuse Program. I did 9 months in ASAP there in Fort Campbell, and that was actually beneficial, believe it or not. Not to say that I necessarily gave up drinking, but I know I keep a heck of a lot closer eye on it now. Besides consuming a depressant when you're already depressed is counterproductive.
Right.
Then that was when I really first reached out. Mental health care actually was also right around that time. And it didn't pan out too terribly well. Not in Fort Campbell anyway.
Yeah, I just I've heard that a few times. You had even mentioned earlier that it was different when you got to Fort Carson, as far as how the care they showed and how you were treated. Because let's face it, we'd like it to be more hands-on, but the Army can be a big machine, and sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right arm is doing, and so forth. You care to elaborate on that? How it was different with?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assessment of it. When I started, trying to get any kind of help there in Fort Campbell, it was a bit of an uphill battle because there was one behavior
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
there was certainly challenges to receiving care, but like you said, with changes upon making it to Fort Carson, was there was a behavioral health team per brigade versus one mental health professional per brigade. So you had one person in that team that saw all the members from this battalion. You had another person in the team that saw all the members from this battalion. So it really helped increase the availability of care. So it's certainly beneficial.
Well, yeah, I can certainly see how you know I can see how that plays out. We were in an earlier podcast I had done with my shipmate, Senior Chief Santoni. He even mentioned about bolstering, the VA. Sometimes it doesn't need to be so much streamlined, but bolstered. And I think you hit it right on the head there, where you were talking about in one duty station, you've got one person in charge of the whole brigade, for mental health. And then I believe you were mentioned when you went to Carson, though, they had, just now they had a whole team. Um,
Yeah.
that's got to be a huge factor and a huge impact. And I'm wondering, if there's any way, or if it's possible for the Army to do that across the board instead of hit and miss. Oh, at this duty station, well, we've got some half-assed personnel, and then you go to the next duty station and you're like, oh man, we've got a whole team dedicated to it.
Well, like you were saying earlier about the Army being a machine, like I said, it's not necessarily outlandish to see something like that happening. And when I made the transition to Fort Carson, the Army was also, as it always is, in transition with regards to shifting focus. Like they were trying to kind of bolster mental health services, but as there was then and still is now, there's like a nationwide shortage of professional mental health care providers. I guess would be the term you're looking for.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's especially in the military too, because uh, in earlier conversations that I've had and we've talked about we've had a war in Afghanistan here for going on 18 years, and then before that we've
Right.
had Iraq. We've had all these wars, and this last one was pretty long. So now you've got this outflux. Before it was hurry up, get as many as you can through the door, send them out. Now, but nobody was really prepared for the mass numbers that would be coming back with issues that need
Well,
attention.
yeah, the VA was woefully underprepared rather, for the large influx of veterans that it saw with the global war on terror and the continued military operations around the world. So, I mean, I want to say there's been like 1.5 million guys that have separated from service, just since '01, and this, and that being till, I want to say, 2013, 2014 time frame. There's like 1.5 million veterans that, left active duty service and went into the VA healthcare system essentially thereafter. And along with that influx, they're also running into issues with, say, like providing female health services, because, well, they were geared for more treating the large populations of veterans that had come before, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Cold War era, and the majority of that military population is geriatric and male.
Yeah, it's definitely.
The giant influx of male and female veterans that are 20, 30, 40 years old, that they're going to have to be caring for quite some time, and they're kind of scrambling to put together services needed.
Yeah.
Fast enough.
I imagine that plus the fact that even today they're still recognizing things that have been going on for a long time, like Agent Orange. Like my father he did 2 tours in Vietnam, and it took them forever to get that straightened out with the issues that they had had with Agent Orange, and finally, get him seen and get him care without writing it off as, oh, well, he's a smoker, So I can definitely see that being an issue.
Honestly, the global war on terror vets are kind of fighting their own fight with something similar, I guess, vis-a-vis burn pits.
Indeed. Big one.
The burn pit registry, where, the numerous people that are still fighting with Gulf War sickness.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's just stuff that has been, affecting people's lives that, VA or the government or the DOD at large is just saying, no, we don't believe that was it.
Yeah. But I'm kind of thinking that that's probably going to be the thing, a monster we're going to have to contend with this in the mental health area as well. Kind of like what they did with the Agent Orange and the burn pits, where it's going to take an overwhelming number for people to kind of wake up and go, oh, well, shit, I guess it is a problem. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people have talked about PTSD in veterans today, and the higher rate of occurrence. And honestly, I wouldn't even say it was so much a higher rate of occurrence, but it started to gain more prevalence, especially in the Vietnam era. Like when a lot of the fighting men and women were returning from World War II, they didn't come back on an airplane; they came back on a ship. Okay.
Right.
And that voyage, coming back across the Atlantic or coming back across the Pacific, this was a long ship ride. And the whole time you're there with your buddies, and you're getting to talk about and kind of process what you've just gone through. And
True.
maybe even reconcile some of that before you're reintroduced to the civilian population. Whereas Vietnam, to current, a lot of these guys they're coming back on jet planes. So like you wake up in a war zone, and by the time it's bedtime, you're home.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that. That's a pretty interesting perspective.
So I'd listened to your previous podcast where you're talking to the chief about it, and it is an issue that it's kind of a like you guys were saying that you can't just flip a switch and be expected to act right when you get here.
Right. You've got months and possibly years of having it programmed into your body to do things a certain way. Not just your brain but your muscle memory too. And then all of a sudden you've got to adjust to something where everything you've ever learned has an opposite effect out here. Everything. Well, I can't say everything because I'd be speaking for too many people, but a lot of people, everything that you were taught, everything that was ingrained into you is now having a negative effect on your everyday life and your everyday interactions with people.
So I can speak for that personally. Like when I first got home, when I got home on my first deployment, I was down in Fort Hood. I was living out towards the Killeen Airport, and twice, like a couple of things happened the first night that I was home. Like I woke up in the middle of the night, flipping out because I couldn't find my weapon, like tearing my bedroom apart. Where is my weapon? Oh my God, I'm in so much shit. Why can't I find my personal weapon? Until I was reminded, after I'd been looking for a second, it finally clicked. Like, oh hey, dummy, you're home.
Yeah.
Or later that morning, again, lying in bed, and I hear, a plane coming into land, and it sounded to me like, incoming fire, so I rolled right out of bed, face down on the floor, waiting for the boom. And before, it took a second to click, like, hey, again, you're home.
Yeah,
So,
and that is that is something I've heard from so many that come back, is that initial, where's my weapon, where's my body armor? Because I myself have grabbed from my body armor after zonking out on the couch and somebody slamming the screen door, and been like, looking around, because all I can think of is when First Sergeant used to come in slamming shit around saying, get the fuck up, let's get out, and I'm like, so I can definitely understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, it's weird, because, like you were saying, you're used to being this way, and while really all that starts in basic, where, you get your brain essentially rewired, the breakdown and the buildup. You're created in their image, so to speak, and you react to this stimuli this way. And when you're coming out of basic, like, it's soft set. It's there, but it's not reinforced, if you will. But after after deployment, or a couple deployments, that those changes become hardwired, and it takes an inordinate amount of time to try and get away from that particular route of thinking.
Indeed.
Because what that time in combat, it reinforces those changes, and it solidifies them. And the more times that you've dealt with it, the harder set that is.
Right.
So it becomes harder, therefore, to undo and get away from and unassociate, these things, from your being in civilian life.
Yeah, it's an imprint. It's kind of like, when you've got so much time to have it set in and burned in like that, kind of like when you set a piece of furniture on a carpet. If it sits there for a couple of years, you go to move that piece of furniture, you've still got those indents from the legs, right? Like they're like,
yeah,
they're
it's still
there.
Imprinted.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for that to come up. To right itself, if you will.
Right.
It's generally not something that does that on its own. Like, it's not usually self-resolving. It's things that you're going to have to work at, I guess.
Right, but you don't even realize it, though, do you? Like, it, at least in the beginning, because sometimes it's maybe it's because it's so gradual, or maybe not. But I know it took a while. It took people pointing shit out to me, like, "Hey, man, you all right? You're doing this." Oh shit, really? Oh yeah, I guess I was.
Yeah, it's something. And, like, it took me, hundreds of hours of time in therapy, and like, well, most of which happened while I was still active duty in Fort Carson, and my time with the Warrior Transition Unit and stuff. I spent a lot of time working through traumas of deployment, and just traumas of just life that happened while you were gone, or getting ready to go, or what have you.
Yeah.
So.
Especially when you've only been back a few months and you already find out that the unit's got orders to deploy again in another, 7. So
That's life cycle of the military. It's just kind of moving.
But speaking on that, though, with given all of this that we've just mentioned and more, we've had conversations earlier about when you go to get out, the process, you had a very different experience when you got out and you were seeking help than say I did. Other people, they're going to have different experiences as well because some people it is pretty smooth. They're all hooked up, they get out, they retire, they don't seem to have a whole lot of problems coping. They at least from the outside looking in, they seem to adjust pretty well. And then you have the other set that is just like, wow. And you touched on it a little bit earlier when you were talking about how it seems like there's more cases today. And part of that might be due to the numbers and how long that this has drug on in the Middle East. And part of it could also be the era. You're talking about a different generation. When you were touching on coming back on a plane versus having time to kind of let it sink in what the hell just happened on your way back, like when it came back on the ship.
Right. Well, the main difference you're referencing to would be like, with my med board, I was moved from my line unit. I was in Alpha Battery 329FA at the time, and I got transferred to an inter brigade, like warrior transition unit. After the brigade had received word from mental health that, hey, this guy meets criteria for medical separation. So like going through the whole med board process and stuff, that took better than a year. In that time, when you're in WTU, it's not like you got daily tasks as a unit to really take care of much, so you got a lot of time to take care of you. And not only that, but when you're going through that med board, my VA claim and everything was started. My evaluations were done. Like I made my declaration of conditions that I felt I should be rated for. Went through the evaluations. Got word back. That they think you can be rated for this, you can be rated for that, you can be rated for this. And then do you accept what they say, or do you want to, maybe you got more evidence to submit about this condition, that condition. Like the whole VA process. Like I had my VA rating letter and everything in hand when I left Fort Carson. Like I had my rating letter, my DD 214, my little folded flag, the whole works before I left post for the last time. And it was nice because being in that warrior transition unit, they basically hold your hand right through the process. Like, here you go.
Right.
You're going to all these, benefits briefings, so on and so forth. And, they're really trying to set you up, get you, ready to be out the door. And you actually get a lot more time in that process to focus on getting ready to get out than you would if you were still, say, a line unit, where they can keep you working right up until you got your final clearing papers in hand.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot too. Because the whole process you just mentioned just now was already kind of different from mine when I was getting ready to exit. You mentioned WTU. I didn't even know what the hell that was until you mentioned it to me today. You'd mentioned a couple other programs. The what was it? The combat. For
it was the AW2 program.
Yeah, the AW2. The VA always mentions a patient advocate, but nobody ever says, "Hey, where's it at?" And you're already tired of being thrown phone numbers. You're so sick of the phone, you don't even want to look at one half the time,
The VA can be a daunting beast, because the VA is like being in the Army or the Navy. It's a lot of bureaucracy. Like hoops to jump through to get to this person, person, or that person, and so on and so forth. You know, like while you're active duty, they say if you got a problem, you know, you can always use the open door. But you gotta use every open door on the way up until you can finally get to the guy that will help you resolve your issue.
Yeah, but isn't it frustrating? Because
on active duty, there's retribution. Should you say, I don't think my platoon sergeant, first sergeant, battalion sergeant major, you know, freaking platoon leader, battery commander, battalion commander, whatever can help me, and you just jump right to brigade and try and use the open door policy, like you're gonna get shitted on.
Yeah.
You know?
It's unfortunate, and I also saw that happen a lot too. I even saw guys getting punished because they wanted to go seek help for this or that, you know, and it's very frustrating because, you know, even with the process that you were talking about, we're just going, you know, till you get to man at the top. Sometimes it seems like they purposely bury you and have already set up barricades so that nobody can even get to the man at the top. You know what I'm saying?
Like I said, what I was referring to is like the open door policy on active duty. I don't know if you've ever tried to utilize that, like while you were in.
It's had both good and bad. You know, I have used it, and sometimes it actually, you know, was good. You know, it had positive outcomes, and sometimes, like you said, I ended up getting bent over the board for it. You know.
Because again, you had to check every office the entire way up until you could get to the level.
Yeah.
Whereas at the VA, essentially all you gotta do is find the right door and go through it. You know what I mean? Like if you kind of know what you're getting into right away, you're all right. But if you especially if you're new to a location, you don't know where anything's at, you're definitely gonna get to run around. One way that I found that, you know, you can cut through a lot of, you know, save some time was, especially for the global war on terror guys, is find out if your VA has an OIF section and go there. And not necessarily a case manager per se, but they can definitely help. You know, they're an excellent resource. Go there and tell them what you need. They will put you right in the right direction. You know, like, hey, I need an appointment about this, or I'm going to need to see somebody about that. You know, very knowledgeable. Like, oh, you need to go over to this section of the VA, talk to this person, or, you know, go here and talk to that person, so on and so on.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, even I, just to me, feels like this is the first time I've ever heard about the OIF representative over there. So that was even new information for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's information out there that they beat you to death with, and it seems like the same handful of things, but there's also a lot of information that you don't see advertised that's not necessarily handed out that can really actually kind of hinder or be a pitfall, I think.
I wouldn't say that they don't hand it out, but there's so much information out there that it can definitely get lost in the shuffle, so to speak, you know, because when I was going through the med board, I was handed a mass of information, and I had to kind of sift through it and like, okay, this applies to me, this doesn't, this works for me, this doesn't, you know, and kind of go after everything that, you know, worked for me, you know, and kind of help pave my way through the whole thing. And not gonna lie, with the whole the med board and stuff, like I said, you're introduced to the whole VA thing, like before you're even out.
Yeah.
It certainly helps you transition.
Yeah, see, I wasn't really introduced to a whole lot of that on the way out. It was just, you know, a guy who spent a few minutes telling you, okay, these are the forms you fill out to file a claim. You know, he didn't really, if you have something you want to claim, and I'm like, I didn't even know if I had anything wrong with me. You know, I knew my knees hurt, you know, so I put down a few things, but, you know, I literally just got off the fucking plane from Afghanistan. I don't know what the fuck's wrong.
No.
So
with that, when I sat down with that dude in Carson, like the guy as far as like, okay, is there anything you feel you could be, tell me what you should be rated for? And he looks at me and goes, look, man, this is not the time to pull punches. This is not, this is the time and place where if you want, if you feel that, this is a significant enough problem that the VA should know about it, lay it out now.
Yeah. I just knew I was in a hurry. I had so much going on. I was already in the middle of a divorce. I was a hot mess already. So, that, and then being thrown all the information that I was being thrown, just checking off of post, on top of everything that hadn't even really sunk in yet since, just getting off the plane. I imagine I'm not the only person that's gone through that, or I wouldn't think so anyway. That gets so overwhelmed.
When you were going through that was pretty much par for the course.
Yeah, and
like you said, you'd separated 2011, right?
Yeah.
And that was right around the same time as the big military. Like they started pushing the military drawdown, like reducing the end strength. And there were a lot of guys that got pushed out, so to speak, in a way that was rather unceremonious, because they were, trying to make, meet with the commander-in-chief's expectations of what the military should be. And Barack Obama said it should be smaller, and DOD started chopping heads.
Yeah, he wanted it leaner and more agile was the terms he used.
The best way I could say, like, to impress, that would be like when I was in Fort Hood. We had dudes that, pissed hot. We had dudes that had gone AWOL one time, but because the Army was hurting for numbers so bad back in like 06, 07, they'd keep them. Just field grade the guy and then put him right back into the force. Whereas
I remember
you were getting out, if you got in any kind of trouble like that, they weren't trying to keep you at all. They would straight chapter you right out the door. Bye. Not our problem.
Right. I remember the picking and choosing, like, oh, this guy, kick him out. This guy, same offense. No, send him back.
There was actually an excellent example of that in Fort Campbell in Alpha Battery, where two guys in Afghanistan got caught smoking weed in a room.
Right.
One was a 13 Bravo, one was a 13 Delta. Okay. Well, 13 Bravo at the time, the MOS was overstrength. They sent him packing. They hung on to the 13 Delta because apparently the Army was short on FDC guys.
Mm-hmm.
So he got to stay.
Yeah. I remember I remember riding back with those guys when I was getting ready to come home. I was actually on the same convoy, and I was like, "Holy shit, really?" So,
yeah.
Wow.
Quite the times.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of those things that comes into play. Like, what are the needs of the Army at this particular point as to how quickly they will or won't keep you, or like we were saying with guys having time to take care of themselves on their way out the door. You got home from Afghanistan, you got clearing papers, you're gone. You had no time to ACAP, work with resume building or anything. You didn't have any time to acquaint yourself with benefits or anything prior to leaving.
No, I was lucky to get 2 weeks.
So, right. Whereas when I separated, and I finally finaled out in September of 2013, I had a very different experience because I was in an area that they were
doesn't need his name up in lights, he just wants to be heard, whether it's the beat of the mic. He feels so unlike everybody else, alone, in spite of the fact that some people still think that they know him. But fuck him, he knows the code. It's not about the salary, it's all about reality and making some noise, making a story, making sure his click stays up. That means when he puts it down, Tox picking it up. Let's bow. It's like this, y'all. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. He doesn't need his name up in lights, he just wants to be heard, whether it's the beat of the mic. He feels so unlike everybody else, alone, in spite of the fact that some people still think that they know him. But fuck him, he knows the code. It's not about the salary, it's all about reality and making some noise, making a story, making sure his click stays up. That means when he puts it down, Tox.